Our next speaker is also a guest of honor, Professor Andrew McGee, a barrister at law. He is a former professor of business law at the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom, with a BA in jurisprudence and BCL from the University of Oxford. Professor McGee is a retired practicing barrister at law. He is an authority in company and commercial law, and in particular, insurance agencies and securities regulation. He appeared in a number of leading cases on commercial agency law, and he was a member of a highly rated King Chambers cost team, and it dealt with points of principle on costs as well as detailed assessments. Professor McGee is an acknowledged expert in the highly technical area of limitation. He's a regular consultant in limited financial matters in every case around this issue. Apart from the numerous articles he's published in highly prestigious journals, Professor McGee has written a number of books, such as The Limitation Periods, Modern Law of Insurance and Share Capital, and The Law of Life Assurance Contracts, having a wide range of expertise as well as a deep level of knowledge in these fields. Professor McGee, it's a great honor to have you with us. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing your wise words.
Thank you very much. Can I just start by saying to everyone, good day, whatever time of day it may be where you are. It's lunchtime here for me, rather earlier for you, I think. Previous speaker, Yusuf, mentioned something, and indeed the speaker before him mentioned something that I was almost going to start with, which is the fact that it seems to me that very often in conversations about sustainable development, the role of lawyers gets ignored. And I think that's rather a shame. Now, I'm biased, of course, because I'm a lawyer. You would expect me to say that. But I do think that lawyers have a certain amount to contribute to this. We've had some stuff already this morning about cases in the European Court of Human Rights, the importance of which cannot be denied. But I want to take it from a slightly different perspective. One of the strands of this conference is peace, justice, and strong institutions as a sustainable development goal. And what I want to say is this. We can all see that the lack of peace and the lack of justice can damage the sustainable development of the world. You don't need me to tell you that across the world now, as I'm afraid at most times, war and injustice damage economic development and damage health and happiness. And these are things that we all ought to be working to reduce, if not entirely prevent. And the question for me as a lawyer is, what does law have to contribute to that? Now, if we look at some of the papers that are coming over the next couple of days, we can see that there are topics in there which are very relevant to lawyers, and I just want to pick out some of them. One is the general one of human rights violations. Now, human rights, of course, are a very contested subject. It's not purely a matter for lawyers, though it is a matter for lawyers. It's a matter for philosophers and economists and other social scientists as well. But lawyers must have something to do with identifying what human rights are and thinking about how we can get them to be respected. We'll come back to those questions at the end. There's human trafficking, which again is both a legal question and a social phenomenon. And there's also freedom of expression, and I want to spend just a little more time because it's something which is of particular interest to me. I see many places where the necessary freedom of expression to discuss properly issues surrounding sustainable development is undermined, if not completely prevented, by ideology. And those ideologies are sometimes political ideologies, and they are sometimes religious ideologies. And what I want to say is that we cannot be serious about sustainable development unless we insist very firmly that free criticism of both political dogma and religious dogma is essential. There are many arguments to be had, many very important arguments to be had. We all have to be free to talk about them. And I have my ideas, no doubt you have yours, we may well differ. But we've got to be free to talk about those. Now, all these points are easy to talk about. It's taken me only 2 or 3 minutes to stress to you the importance of the things that I'm talking about so far. The question is, how can we achieve those objectives? And linked to that, what do we as lawyers, I as a lawyer, have to contribute to that? There have to be strong institutions, hence the point in the title of that strand. And that's clearly so. Strong institutions, including strong legal institutions, are important throughout the developed world. Anywhere on the planet, any developed or indeed developing society needs to develop strong institutions which can protect the weak and the disadvantaged. The world is full of strong actors. Some of those are political, some of them are commercial. And the commercial ones are the kind of organisation that I dealt with for many years in my work as a practicing barrister. Now, these actors are well organised and they are very willing and very able to act in ways which benefit themselves and the interest groups that stand behind them. But I'm sure I would get general support in this conference if I said that the interest groups that stand behind them and the agendas pursued by these organisations are often not compatible with ideas of sustainable development. Development, possibly, but often not sustainable development, indeed profoundly unsustainable development. But of course, this is not a level playing field. The side of the political and commercial organisations, actors, have their agenda and they have a lot of money and a lot of power. The weak and the disadvantaged cannot readily compete. And it must be part of the function of law and lawyers to do something to even that balance and to achieve that peace and justice through strong institutions. What I say about all this is that lawyers and political scientists, though obviously I'm more interested in the lawyers, need to do 3 things. We need to have our own agenda, our own structure for what we can contribute to sustainable development. And my 3 things are these. Reduce these can be 3 bullet points. We have to argue very strongly the need to respect law and to use it. Because no matter what laws we pass, they will not help unless we encourage, indeed compel, respect for that law. I could spend a great deal of time talking about situations in relation to sustainable development where the law is disregarded. I don't have time to do that at all, and I'm not going to try. But we can all recognise, I think, there are many places where the law is simply not sufficiently respected. And we as lawyers must stand up for our subject, our discipline, in the context of the Forum of Sustainable Development. Say, this is something you all need to have regard to, because without it, you are not going to achieve sustainable development. And the second thing is, once you've established that it's important to have these laws respected and have their importance recognised, you've got to enact strong laws. Strong laws which will help to protect and develop, indeed require, sustainable development. And that, like much of what I've said already today, I think, is something that is very easy to say, but is by no means easy to do, because we constantly fight against those strong interest groups who certainly do not want some of these laws passed. We see it all the time in many countries of the world. I'm not trying to pick out one country as being more guilty than another, because I think it's a worldwide problem. But unless we as lawyers draft and promote the enforcement, the enactment of the suitable laws, then saying that the law has to be respected will not help us. If the law is weak, then respecting it will achieve very little for you. You have to argue the need for the respect of the law, and then you have to draft and cause the enactment of laws which will give the necessary protection to people, to individuals, to groups, to countries, and to our territory and indeed our environment. And then when you've got those laws on the statute book, we come to my third bullet point. And my third bullet point is that we have to be prepared to stand up for the enforcement of those rules in practical situations. I spent many years teaching law students at various levels, various universities around the world. And the comment that I would make about lawyers is that often we tend to think that once the law has been enacted, our work is done. It's not, and we need to recognize that it's not. Because even when you have good laws on the statute book, those laws are not then properly applied. They will become what lawyers like to call dead letters, and it will be no use at all having the statute book. So those are the three things that I think lawyers should be pursuing in relation to sustainable development. And I say to those of you who are not lawyers and who approach this from a more natural science perspective, you should be prepared to engage with lawyers because there are things that we can contribute to this process. But equally, you have to make clear to us the things we need to do. I find when I talk to natural scientists over the years that we are not good at understanding each other. It's what's sometimes known in the rest of the world as the two cultures problem. That I think one way and scientists think an entirely different way. Sometimes we have trouble understanding each other. We would do better, I think, if we could understand each other better. We would be stronger together than we are apart. Now, all of this creates another problem for lawyers, which again, we're not good at. It creates lawyers who are, to a certain extent, political actors. And many lawyers, those I've taught over the years and those I've worked with in my professional practice, don't like to think of themselves as political actors. They like to think of law and politics as two quite separate disciplines, not having a great deal to say to each other. They're wrong about that as well. The interface between law and politics is as important as the interface between law and science. And if I want to leave you with one thing, I'm going to finish very shortly because I see my time is all. So if there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's the thought that what this conference ought to promote and what the whole of the world of sustainable development is better collaboration among the disciplines. We will all do better if we work together and if we work in our own separate little compartments. And with that point, I think I will stop. Thank you again for the invitation. Thank you for listening patiently to me. I hope I've managed to persuade you at least a little bit of the role of lawyers in sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor McGee. And I think it's really vital how you articulated this. Lawyers do have such a fundamental place to play, both in helping articulate it from a legal perspective, but also from a moral perspective, and then translating this detailed ideas into understandable formats for the public, which I think you've done very well today. Thank you kindly.